Jesus answered, beginning in Mark 10, verse 6, "From the beginning of the creation, God made them male and female. For this cause shall a man leave father and mother and cleave to his wife, and they twain shall be one flesh. So then they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man, let not any government, let not any court put asunder." God defines marriage as the lifelong union of one man and one woman. As far as he's concerned, people who frivolously divorce because they decide they're just not compatible are still obligated to the vows that they made in his sight. And Jesus says later that a man who puts away his wife and marries another commits adultery, except in cases of fornication. And the no-fault divorce laws of our country have played a huge role in destroying the institution of marriage, of the breakdown of the home in our day. And God also defines marriage as between a male and a female. Governments did not make marriage. Courts did not invent marriage, therefore they cannot reinvent marriage. God is the one who invented marriage. He says what marriage is. The phrase about marriage being honorable in all means that it's honorable in all societies, in all cultures. It should be held up. And generally speaking, it is. Virtually every culture around the world and across the ages has recognized and revered the institution of marriage. It was given to Adam and Eve in the beginning, and therefore it is instituted by God for all mankind. And he says the bed undefiled. You know, the Bible surrounds the marriage bed with all sorts of thou shalt nots. But all of those, that wall of thou shalt nots, aren't put there to spoil mankind's fun. They're put there to protect something that is sacred, something that is holy, something that is beautiful. It's meant to be beautiful. It's meant to be sacred and holy. It's reserved for marriage. And when it's honored, then it's fulfilling, it's beautiful. But when it's not honored, when those thou shalt nots are not observed, then what was supposed to have been priceless becomes cheap. What was supposed to have been beautiful becomes ugly. What was supposed to have been a blessing becomes a curse. And in Genesis 2:24, he says that a man shall leave father and mother, cleave unto his wife, they shall be one flesh. And the Apostle Paul quotes that in Ephesians 5:31, and then he explains something deep. Now listen, this is something so deep that the wisest man who ever lived was never able to fathom this mystery. At the end of Proverbs, after writing 30 chapters of the profoundest wisdom ever recorded, Solomon admits in Proverbs 30, verses 18 and 19, just a handful of things that were too wonderful for even him to fathom. And the last one that he gives is the way of a man with a maid. Now, this was a man who had had 1,000 maids. He wasn't talking about what you do with a maid. He wasn't talking about what results from it. He was talking about the deeper meaning behind it all. What is the significance of that union? To wise old Solomon, this was a great mystery. He never solved it. But 1,000 years later, in Ephesians 5:32, Paul reveals to us an insight that Solomon never had. Paul quotes the Genesis passage about a man leaving father and mother, cleaving to his wife, them being one flesh. And then he says, this is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. The union between a man and wife in this world on the physical level is the closest thing that this world has to the joy, the rapture, the union that Christ will have with his bride someday when he takes us out of this world. I don't mean that God has a physical union with people. God is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. But the physical rapture of a man and wife is the closest thing that this world has to the spiritual joy and wholeness and beauty that his people will have in perfect worship and communion with him at the resurrection.